now for our third and final talk of the morning. Please welcome Tyler Ewart from right here in the Depew Synthes Institute.
Good morning, everybody. It's kind of a surreal moment for me, so if I start nervously laughing uncontrollably, just laugh with me. And then later I will edit it so that it looks like I told a hilarious joke, which is nice. But seriously, save the laughter for when I start nervously laughing. All right, so today we're here because we want to learn about innovation. How do we find the key to innovation? What is it? Is there a key to innovation? How do we lock that down? What is it that we can point to and say, that's it. That's the technique. That's how we follow it. That's how we get to that point. Well, there's a school of thought that says our ability to recognize opportunities is actually that key. That if we can stop for a moment and say, wow, this could go somewhere. That's how we get to the next part. That's how we find that key to innovation. So then it snowballs. How then do we learn to recognize those opportunities? And this man right here is a prime example of that ability. This is Percy Spencer. I am willing to make a bet that almost everybody in this room has no idea who Percy Spencer is. It's okay. Percy Spencer worked for the Raytheon Corporation back in the 1940s, and Percy Spencer invented the microwave oven. This guy single-handedly, pretty much, defined how single guys like me eat our TV dinners, right? He changed the world, and we don't really know about him, but that's okay because what Percy Spencer did and how he did it is the key here. So working for the Raytheon Corporation, he's making radar dishes for the war effort back in the 1940s, and one day he is wandering around and he stands a little too close to one of the radar dishes, and it actually melts a candy bar inside of his pocket while he's standing right next to it. And I'm sure all the radiation wasn't good for him either, but Percy reaches inside and he pulls out his hand and he looks at the chocolate and something happens. Percy stops for a second and he says, why? What is it? Why did this happen? How is this happening? Can we use this? Can we do something else with this, right? Percy Spencer actually took a second and questioned the value of what it is that he found. So the point of this is, how did Percy do that? He questions the value. No one else did. The key to this is, everyone else saw this. Percy was literally not the first person to actually make this discovery. That's where it's unique, right? Because Percy worked with numerous other people inside the organization. All these other people, I don't know if it was necessarily melted candy bars, right? But they'd all seen it either heat up food or do something unique to that effect, and every single one of them did the exact same thing. They all said, no, it's got to be done by Thursday, it's got to be out by Friday, I got stuff to do this weekend. That's it. We have a goal. We got to move forward. That was the whole thing that separated Percy, that unique opportunity between Percy and everyone else that worked with Percy. Percy actually took a second and he learned to question the value of what it was that he had discovered. It's an amazing example because we work in an area where most of us have probably experienced something like this, where someone's been working on something, you might have been in a group, you might have been working with a bunch of other people, and for a moment something happened and you thought to yourself, oh man, that's cool, but it's not my department. So we'll just go ahead and we'll move on. We'll do something else. It'll be easier that way. Because why? It's got to be done by Thursday. It's got to be out by Friday. I got stuff I have to do this weekend. So why don't we all think like Percy? What is it about him that makes him unique? What is it about us that makes us who we are? How are we separated from him? The problem that we've kind of run into today is this train of thought where there is something called the right answer. And Percy was able to focus on the idea of the right answer, but he was still able to see past that. He was able to see the pool, right? He was able to see the forest and not just the trees. So the right answer mindset is something that's poisoning us from the inside out. It's okay to have goals, and right answers exist, but they exist more in terms of like math questions and things we can point to and say definitively, this is what it is. This is where the buck stops, right? I was at home watching TV, and I saw a commercial where a teacher was talking about kids these days in the American school system and how it's all different and how it's all changed. And he said something that was just, it blew my mind because I had never actually heard it before. He actually said, kids are afraid to try because they know that there is a right answer. That's massive. That kind of embedded mindset, just for the youth of our culture, is sitting there thinking to themselves, do I raise my hand? Do I actually want to try and say something? Because if it's not the right answer, it's got to be the wrong answer. Everyone that worked with Percy had that kind of mindset. And we all suffer from that mindset. We all suffer from the right answer scenario, where we look at things and we say, is this direction that I really want to go? It's difficult to get out of that. It's hard, and the future is nothing but that. So, how does that apply to us if I'm talking about a bunch of kids? What is it about kids in high school, kids in elementary school, who are sitting around thinking, oh my God, I don't want to try, that's awful, I'm going to fail? So, the difference is that we carry this in an alternative way. We've moved away from the idea of definitive right answers, and we've started applying it to ourselves and our lives instead. An example of this is, where will you be in 5 years? I, being new here, was sitting in the cafeteria having a conversation with somebody, eating lunch. And while talking to her, she had explained to me that she had the answer, right? The right answer to this question, where will you be in 5 years? She knew it. And she explained to me that she was a failure because she had the plan. She knew where she was supposed to be, when it was she was supposed to be there. She knew how long it was going to take to get there, her 5-year plan, and she wasn't there. So now she sees herself as a failure. She's probably more successful than most of her friends. She doesn't even realize it. She's so overly concerned with the question, where will you be in 5 years? Because if there's a question, there's got to be an answer, right? I mean, that's what we learn. That's what we go to school for. If someone poses a question, you have to answer that question. Where will you be in 5 years? Unbelievable. I dare anybody to tell me where the world will be in 5 years. It's an impossible concept. To think that we can stand there and say, definitively, cell phones will be at this point, computers will be at this point, and we will move to it's absolutely ridiculous. Some of these people these days, they're in their garage one day, and 2 months later, they're the CEO of a corporation. And I can make you a bet it was not part of the 5-year plan that they had looked at, right? But she was talking to me about this, and she said, are you where you thought you'd be? Are you at that point in your life that, you part of your 5-year plan? Or is that, and I'm like, I can't give you an answer to that. I've never actually thought about the 5-year plan in that kind of mindset. My mindset's always been, I never want to look at an opportunity as an obstacle. And that was like a Zen moment for me, because while I'm a decent rambler, I don't Zen much, but it was like, boom, like that was it, right? I was like, wow, that was awesome. Write that one down, Tyler. So my ability to recognize the difference between opportunities and obstacles is kind of what got me here today. And at the time, it might not necessarily look like an opportunity for you. I, back in the day, worked for Child and Family Services, and it became real heavy on me, became way too much. Couldn't handle it. Emotionally, physically, I had to get out of the job. And I left. And I went and I started selling hot dogs, because that's the next step, right? Like that's the forward motion you're looking for. In terms of the swing, I would wager and say that perhaps that it was probably at the bottom point before it started to come back up. But what it did do is it gave me an opportunity to practice video editing. And I did something that I loved. I started making YouTube videos, I started doing video editing, and I just kind of ran with it. I never went to school for it, but I had a knack for it, and I enjoyed what I was doing, even though I was serving hot dogs. And that's actually how I got this job. I got noticed by someone here in the AV department, and they offered me a position. And now, I'm making twice as much as I was even at Child and Family Services. And granted, going from senior residential counselor with tons of room to move up, and all these opportunities and people asking you if you want to do it, to a hot dog shop really doesn't seem like the right way to go. It doesn't seem like the opportunity. The difference was, I kind of recognized that opening that it gave me to do something unique. And that's how I applied this to my life. There wasn't a right answer. When I was working at the hot dog shop, I didn't say to myself, oh boy, This is it, right? This is you're not part of your 5-year plan. This is ridiculous. Your life has to be, done by Thursday, out the door by Friday, because we got stuff to do this weekend, right? It's not the way that I looked at it. So, how many of you how many of you are where you thought you'd be? Oh, it's a tongue twister for me today. The point of this slide is because I know for a fact from speaking to a lot of you who actually work here that you are not in the position that you thought you'd be in part of your 5-year plan. I know this. I've spoken to a lot of you. I've heard a lot of stuff. There's so many of you who are now the heads of this or the heads of that, and none of you actually sat down and said, oh man, I want to accidentally be the head of this department by the time I'm whatever, right? But you guys don't see yourselves as failures. You guys see yourselves as accomplished individuals, and so do the people underneath you. The people below you, the people below the heads, they see you as leaders. We have to now lead then. If we are in the position of power, it's your job to help strike the right idea mindset. Because that is all that we are training people to think about these days. The fact that it's got to be done by Thursday, out by Friday, stuff to do this weekend, that's how we lead our lives. That's how this person I spoke to in the cafeteria saw herself. It was a failure. There was nothing but failure inside of her, failure in her future. Those people, they will never, ever think outside the box. How can someone come into work? How can someone look at their life, stop for a moment and say, oh, there's an opportunity, when all they're focused on is this goal that they've created for themselves? The 5-year question's a great question. It is, as long as it's posed as an open-ended question, like, where do you hope you'd be? Where do you wish you'd be? Or, where do you want to be in 5 years? That's a terrible train of thought. We have to get away from that. It's our jobs now, as leaders of the people who are beneath us, to show them that just because they're not where they thought they would be in life doesn't mean that they're necessarily failures. That the right answer isn't always the right answer. So, we do this by asking ourselves every day, is this really an obstacle or is this an opportunity? Pose that to the people underneath you. Pose it to yourself. How do we get in the mindset of Percy Spencer? The guy's a genius. I have no idea. I'm not Percy Spencer. I'm not Albert Einstein. I'm not Mahatma Gandhi. I'm not Martin Luther King. None of us here are probably going to change the world. Some of us might, and that'll come back to bite me. But that's not the point, right? The point is that if all of us, just for a moment, because we work together, right? If we didn't do what Percy's coworkers did, if we didn't stop and say to ourselves, done by Thursday, out by Friday, stuff to do this weekend, right? Maybe they would have had that aha moment that Percy Spencer had. We can have that aha moment that Percy Spencer had. Stop for a second. 1. Every day, ask a question. Think to yourselves, where's this going? Why is this happening, right? Stop in the hallway. Talk to someone in the hallway. Ask them a question. Get to know somebody else. Who knows what'll happen? We're all guilty of that routine. It's something that we fall into. Just because I was able to recognize an opportunity doesn't mean I don't do it. Anybody who works here knows that last week the cafeteria was out of forks, right? I mean, it was terrible. It was a horrible situation. But the point of the story is to show you how literally I can translate this into the real world. I walked over to get a fork in the morning, and I pushed the dispenser, and nothing came out, and I was just like beside myself. So what do, right? I walk to the other dispenser. I'm like, oh, there's got to be forks in the other one, whatever, right? So I walk over to the other dispenser, and I push the button, and nothing comes out. And I'm standing there like a total idiot, right? And someone comes over from the cafeteria and goes, oh, are you looking for the forks? They're right there. In a box in front of me. Right? How better can I put into words about literally leaning over what it is I'm looking? It's an obstacle. My obstacle was the very thing that I was looking for. I actually leaned over this, and I'm like, why is what I do normally not working? My routine is all out of whack. This is something that we've got to get away from. This is something that it's not just you guys, it's me. Yeah, I was able to recognize an opportunity in a certain moment. That was great. And it worked out for me, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying everyone go and quit your jobs and work at hot dog shops because something better's coming along. That's an absurd train of thought. Buy lottery tickets, they're more safe. But it's that moment in the cafeteria that shows me, really, self-reflection on how I fall victim to the exact same mindset. So what we have to do now is we have to measure our successes by what we've done in life as a whole, and not by the 5-year plan. We have to stop, and we have to move forward, and at the end, turn around and ask ourselves, what did I accomplish? Did you do something important? Did you help someone do something important? My goal in life is to turn around and look back and point to something and go, that was it. That was the part. That's what made it for me. I want to be able to look back and say the words, I lit the match that started the fire that helped change the world. Thank you very much.